Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Anamanaguchi LP, Endless Fantasy. Anamanaguchi is a New York electronic music outfit who is pretty well known for combining rock instrumentation with bright, super bright 8-bit style synthesizers and percussion. It's a sound that they've been molding since the late 2000s to incorporate lots and lots of melody, super distorted guitars, pretty heavy drums, taking musical cues from video game soundtracks like Super R-Type or numerous Mega Man games. Now there's a plethora of different video game musics out there, and Anamanaguchi definitely does not take a ton of influence from some of the more quirky, dark, or even dramatic sounds to come out of video game music. Instead, the music that Anamanaguchi creates seems like it would be best set to visuals of epic space battles, futuristic buildings, colorful armor, lasers, and hover cars reaching speeds of 100 miles per hour. Now, the band's latest LP, Endless Fantasy, also captures these vibes, but does it while stretching out the band's stylistic bases, meaning they take their 8-bit sound and they just try out more genres with it. While primarily the band was known for fusing rock instrumentation with 8-bit synths and percussion, like I said earlier, now on Endless Fantasy the band is trying their hand at Japanese pop, electropop, a little bit of house music. Now, some of the genre hopping that the band does on Endless Fantasy is very much needed, because this is a pretty long stretch of an album with 22 tracks spanning 76 minutes. In a way, it's almost as if the band is sort of making up for lost time, because it has been a while since their last full-length LP, if you don't count the soundtrack music that they did for the Scott Pilgrim video game. With so many tracks on this album that feel very similar emotionally and sonically, I can't help but feel like, even though I do enjoy Endless Fantasy to an extent, the album is somewhat bogged down. There are highlights on this album for sure, very well written highlights and well produced highlights, but maybe they don't stick out as well as they possibly could. One of the songs that dropped before this LP, MEOW, which I absolutely loved when I first heard it and still do, loving the pumping bass line on this track, the silly meow sounds coming through the song too, the anthemic synthesized lead melodies on this track that rush very colorfully as the chorus soars. This song really hits that sweet spot that Anamanaguchi is great at hitting, which combines very awesome and anthemic and well-written melodies with just outright absurdity. While the band does have this real talent for writing instrumental rock tunes, it just feels like they don't want to take themselves too seriously and just kind of keep things fun. Now, while some people may hate the inclusion of this track on this album, I will defend for sure the song Prom Night. It is an electro-pop tune with a very radio-friendly vocal, beat, and hook. And while I do think the lyrics on this track are kinda cheesy, the hook, the chorus, is freaking killer. And I actually think if the band comes through with the right music video for this track, it could kind of be their crossover hit. I dig the song In the Basement because it does bring a little bit of variation with some breezier, lighter instrumental verses with some very clear guitar strumming going on in there. The songs Snow Angels and Planet stick out to me because they are incredibly pretty slow jams. I'm loving how the band can just take the tempo, turn it down, and make something that is as pretty to listen to as a very starry night sky is to look into. And some of the harder hitting tracks like Viridian Genesis, which is pretty exciting with its very sudden tempo change and how it sort of blasts off in a very speedy way. However, other tracks on here just feel too similar in style, whether it's to other songs on this album or previous material from Anamanaguchi. Like the song SPF 420 feels like the band grabbed one of their previous singles, airbrushed, drove it to a chop shop, and then used parts from it for this song. And oddly enough, one half of the lead melody from the song Pastel Flag sounds just like Nelly's Dilemma. And tracks like Akira or Space Wax America, while I do welcome all Weezer and anime references, I don't see what these tracks bring to the album that others don't already. And songs like Endless Fantasy as well as Japan Air, while Anamanaguchi is trying out house music and a little bit of Japanese pop on these tracks, I don't see what Anamanaguchi brings to these genres other than an 8-bit aesthetic, because I'm not really in love with these tracks for their tunes or their structure. I mean, I consider myself to be a pretty patient listener. For sure, I have loved albums that are much longer than this one. I just feel like their insistence on going for this one sonic vibe on many many of these tracks drowns out some of this album's hidden potential. Because even when a song or a melody on this LP may be particularly good, it doesn't really stick out because so many of the songs on this LP, there's not a lot of sonic diversity. For sure, there are solid tracks on this LP that I could enjoy singularly, but as I listen to this album as a whole, the experience is kind of like getting belly sick off of a giant bag of candy that I was pretty convinced once I started eating it, I could finish. At their worst on this LP, the tracks are decent. At their best, they're great. They're fantastic. Do give this thing a listen if you're looking for something very melodic, incredibly produced, fun, and this feeling may last longer for you than it did for me, exciting. I'm feeling a strong 6 to a light 7 on this thing. If you've given it a listen, what did you think? Did you love it? Hate it? Why? What do you think I should review next? And that's it. This review is my opinion. If you don't like it, here's a straw. I want to give a quick shout out to Oklahoma, Get Better, Repair, Rebuild, also Tiny Mixtapes, 5-second films, and Carrots. Eat 'em. Only the strong subscribe. All mistakes were intentional. Anamanaguchi, Endless Fantasy, Anthony Fantano, forever.